Are you interested in Christian education? Would you like to learn how to be a Christian teacher or how to run your very own Christian school with success? The GCS Apprenticeship Program can help. Learn more on our website at gcsapprenticeship.com.
The Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network brings to you a complete lineup of podcasts where you will hear practical and tactical theology. Our desire is not simply that you consume our shows, but that you also live out your faith in every area of life. We can talk all day long about these things, but if we fail to put them into practice, then we fail as ambassadors of Jesus Christ our King. Subscribe now to your favorite Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network shows, or you can subscribe to the Reconstructionist Radio Master Feed, where all of the content we produce, including the audiobooks and audio articles, will pop up as soon as they are available. And don't forget to visit reconstructionistradio.com to volunteer as a narrator or to partner with this ministry financially. May the Holy Spirit stir you into action for Christ and His kingdom. The Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network presents Worldview Media Podcast, where Gordon and Joyce Runyon view popular media through the lens of the biblical five-point covenant model to help believers appreciate and apply principles of exciting narrative and engaging storytelling.
Hey, it's us, Worldview Media Podcast. We're broadcasting live from our studio that we just built out of sticks in the forest.
In our crazy clothes, I guess. But good running shoes.
It's the Worldview Media Podcast.
And you'll never guess what we're going to talk about.
Let's have fun before we get to the badness. This is the most frivolous podcast on the Reconstructionist Radio Network, which otherwise is your one-stop shop for all your dominionizing needs. I'm your host, Gordon Runyon. This is my wife, Joyce.
Hello.
And we are happy that you joined us today. And we are going to talk about a movie that appeared on PBS on Masterpiece. Is that what it's called, or
That's
is it Masterpiece Theater?
I think it's Masterpiece Theater.
And
usually really good quality.
We kind of like
British
Masterpiece
selections.
Theater most of the time. This movie is called The Child in Time, starring Doctor Strange.
Benedict, my old pal Ben.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
And by saying that name out loud, I've just mentioned the best thing about the movie.
He really did very well.
In this movie, Benedict Cumberbatch is the man in terms of acting.
Yeah.
I just thought he was amazing. And the way I knew he was amazing is because I didn't realize it. You know, I was just sucked in to his stuff and what was going on with him. And after a while, I just had to step back and say, wow, he just really drew me in there.
How much did they pay him?
Yeah, right. And so Benedict Cumberbatch, more wine.
We should have had more wine watching that.
Benedict Cumberbatch, star of the BBC series Sherlock. And
Another
also,
nice, fun program. Good to watch.
Academy Award winner for The Imitation Game. So he has done some good stuff. And he's also Doctor Strange in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He plays a writer. Is he a children's story writer?
Yes.
And horrific thing happens that everybody who has a child, worst nightmare, he looks away from his 3-year-old daughter.
She's 4.
She's 4.
Yeah.
She's looking at a book at the grocery store while he's checking out, and he looks away for a moment, and when he looks back, she's gone.
Gone.
And she is gone forever
Gone.
from
gone,
that
gone.
point.
Yeah.
They never hear anything else about her after that. Now,
as long as we watch the movie.
right. So it turns out that the whole movie then is kind of documenting how terrible this whole thing proved to be and how it winds up destroying his marriage, and he's apparently drinking a lot.
Yeah, his writing has probably gotten not so well.
Right, he can't
He's
write
having
anything
problems
anymore.
writing, has crazy friends. He can't
Right.
write things either.
And so right as soon as you stop talking about Benedict Cumberbatch and his acting, I think everything goes downhill in this.
It's a weird little thing they put together.
I really feel like the movie, I said at one point when we were watching it, I said, this is the saddest movie in the history of sad movies. And maybe that's just because I'm a dad who raised little girls, and every once in a while they do kind of just manage to walk around the corner and they're not there
out of your
when
sight.
you looked around, and man, it's terrible. It's scary and frightening, terrifying, and this is the worst thing that could possibly happen. And you just really feel that pain through the whole movie, or I did anyway.
Yeah.
And so in that, if that's what the movie was trying to accomplish, then, good job. I'll give the little golf clap for that, But I think what we couldn't stand about it is that it's a movie without a conclusion, and there are ridiculous things that happen that have zero explanation.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's got a friend who was his publisher.
Who worked with the government.
Right.
In the government. I don't know
how that works. Was it a government publishing company?
He had a position on some board, or I don't know.
So anyway, Benedict's friend retires, moves out to the country, and goes bonkers.
Yeah.
Super
he really
crazy.
did build stuff out of sticks.
Right. He really did build his own man cave out in the woods out of sticks.
Yeah.
And eventually winds up killing himself with no explanation, no reason.
And who is it that finds him? Dear old Benedict.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is the subplot to the story.
That's one.
And it means nothing.
Yeah.
It's never
There's no
explained.
explanation, yeah.
And even figuring out how that's supposed to be at all connected to the main story.
Well, there's legislation going on with books for kids, and what do we do? Do we endorse books for kids? And I guess the guy, his friend, wrote the however many pages of documented evidence that this is what we need to do as the government. We need to support this thing and not this thing, and apparently he felt really bad about doing that. I don't know, but it's just kind of floating. You kind of have to pick these things up, and we were complaining to Carmen about how we hated this, how we hated it, how we didn't really like what we had seen, and she said, "Oh, it's one of those where you just walk in and things are happening, and then it ends, and it's just like you're just walking out of somebody's life, and that's just what life is, and you encounter people in your path along the way, and step in and step out, and you don't really know anything about them." And I was like, well, that's a terrible thing for a book.
Well, I remember reading about that back in the 80s, taking writing classes, that for a long time there have been these experimental novels, and I think they're even called that, or they were, where some academics and scholars somewhere decided that for a novel to actually have a plot, that's so bourgeois and
droll.
yeah.
This has been done before
We
a
need
thousand
to
times.
we need to get beyond the plot and I felt like that was maybe kind of what they did, is that they want to bring you in for a moment to have you experience what the characters are experiencing, but the whole theory is that rarely in your life do you find Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 with a conclusion that's satisfying, and rarely are all the questions answered and the loose ends tied up, and so they just don't even attempt anything like that. They just kind of end in the middle, and with nothing resolved and nothing answered. And my vote is that's a horrible way. You can't even call that telling a story, because a story goes somewhere.
Yeah.
It begins here, there's development, there's an arc, and it ends. And this was not that.
No, was not that.
So if you're going to watch this movie,
be prepared.
The Child in Time.
The Child in Time, yes.
Wow, it's a heart-wrenching thing, but part of why it's heart-wrenching is because you're rooting for the guy, and you're rooting for the girl. You want to hold out hope that maybe she really can be found, and then
who knows?
Suddenly it's just, well, we're not doing that anymore, and roll credits.
You're like, wait just a minute here. How? What? So.
Right. I don't know. Did you have anything else you wanted to pile on top of this?
Well, even in trying to do what you said, where you just kind of step in, go along the path for a little while, and then just keep going, it was just really disjointed. There was a lot of flashbacks, and so you're like, where am I in time? And are we flashing back? Are we flashing forward? What's happening here? And so some of that disjointedness didn't enhance it for me, as well as the weird story about not knowing who they are and thinking, I'm going to get to know these people, and then you're like, well, maybe not.
Right.
I don't know anything.
Well, both Rushdoony in his book Flight from Humanity, and also Francis Schaeffer in his book How Shall We Then Live, they both kind of point out that once art becomes disconnected from a Christian worldview, you kind of inevitably arrive at a place where the artists begin to think that true art has to be a rebellion against reality. That you haven't been a true artist by reflecting reality, but the true artist is one who rebels against it. And this is where you come up with the, triangle art and stuff like that. It splashes of paint randomly. That's supposed to be art. And it really becomes a hatred of the created world. And we're going to express this through
as many avenues.
Creations that are just absurd. And they're absurd on purpose. And supposedly that's very sophisticated. And is going to break everybody out of their kind of caveman sensibilities, and we're going to
be enlightened.
You're right. We're going to enlighten you. And I almost felt like some of that was going on, but in professional wrestling, you have the gimmick called the heel turn, where a guy who was a good guy suddenly becomes a bad guy and beats up all the good guys, and now you really hate him because you liked him before. Yeah. Well, the makers of this movie do a heel turn right at the very end. They're drawing you in, and you're in this story, and you're ready to go along with wherever they're going to take you, and right at the end, they just say, "No, we're not going to finish this story," and roll credits. And wasn't that an amazing thing,
Yeah. Well, and if you read what PBS says about this, don't believe it.
Right. Well, let's see. Here's how PBS advertises the movie. They say, with tenderness and insight, The film explores the dark territory of a marriage devastated by the loss of a child. Kate's absence sets Stephen and his wife on diverging paths as both struggle with an all-consuming grief. With the passage of time, a balance of sorts returns until hope surfaces and triumphs unexpectedly. And that last line is total lies.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, is it as close as they feel like they can get to actual hope or triumph? I didn't see hope or triumph in there, did you?
No. Not by my definition.
Not by a Christian definition.
Continuation of time, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
No, it was bad. Benedict Cumberbatch gets an A+ for me for the acting.
Well, and he really does carry it. You know, you don't see a lot of his wife, the little girl that plays their daughter.
Don't see her.
You know, she's in and out, just like laughing and being somewhere because that's what she did. You see his crazy friend somewhat, and his wife who's dealing as well as she can with her husband who's gone off the deep end, and who else is there? I guess there's his parents, but you know he's really the mainstay throughout the whole thing, and everybody else they flash on and off, and here they are. Okay, now they're gone, and
yeah, right, and just a testimony to the fact that probably everybody making this movie at heart really believes that all things are meaningless. Don't you think? That has to be. How could you make a movie like that if you thought there was actually such a thing as real hope and real triumph? Because what they showed was neither one of those.
Well, in the end, I guess he's kind of back together with his wife. I guess they were still married the whole time. They were just separated and not living together.
Right.
And I guess, you know, things continue on for them with...
Yeah, it's really baffling.
Because...
It doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. It would have seemed like we were going to call him at that point. Why not prior?
Yeah.
You know, if you're not going to say something before, why do you say it at the end?
Yeah, they've got a baby coming right at the end. And
well,
it's
that
a
he
bit
doesn't
of a
find you out
surprise.
until she says, I'm at the hospital. Don't worry. I'm okay, but I'd like you to come. And I guess he knows the wing is the maternity wing, and so he's like taking off flying out there.
Right.
But really, you don't want him there for the whole rest of the time? You're just going to have him show up at the end?
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Well, there was another part trying to discern the worldview of the makers. They do... See, here's the thing that irritated me. Is it's called The Child in Time. Mm-hmm. And not knowing anything about the movie, you realize early on that both the father and the mother of the missing child begin to see her in different places. They get glimpses of her, and she walks away. And it's called The Child in Time, and they're kind of having these flashbacks and stuff, but they're seeing her around. They're just not able to catch up to her.
Or hear her voice or whatever, yeah.
And I thought there was some kind of science fiction thing going on. Did you? For a little while?
Well, they have the one crazy guy. It's completely possible.
Right. There's a government weird thing going on. And I thought maybe there was something like that. But then toward the end of the movie, Cumberbatch's movie mom has weirdness to say to him about, before you were born, I was pregnant with you, but we were at this place and I saw a little boy and I knew it was you. Mm-hmm. Now, the boy is in her womb at the time, but she sees an actual
person,
more grown boy over here, and
but you see that when he And that's weird, because he's actually going to meet his wife, estranged wife, somewhere, and he looks in this one pub place, and he's like, it seems familiar.
Is that his mom that he sees?
That's what I'm thinking, because she doesn't look like she's in the right time. She's
right,
dressed
so there
weird,
does...
her hair's weird, but he's current time.
Right, so they do have, in the words of Doctor Who, they do kind of have a weird timey-wimey thing going on.
Yeah.
But it's just a little bit. And nobody ever explains it.
No.
Nobody ever talks about it.
They just say, oh, yes.
This is just how I feel. I felt that boy I saw was you.
And I knew everything was going to be good and whatever.
Francis Schaeffer said that when men remove the knowledge of God from their view, they can't get rid of it. All they can do is suppress the truth, according to Romans 1.
Yeah.
They hold down the truth in all unrighteousness. But when men do that, the truth finds ways to sneak up. And
you can only do so much for so long.
Right. And that men are generally not capable of living consistently without having the reality of God in their lives. And he said what they wind up doing then is trumpeting loudly how they don't believe in God or any spiritual thing, but they'll be really into their horoscope or something, or they'll visit a fortune teller or something like that, and that. So as these men are talking about how enlightened and secular they are, the more they do that, the more they become susceptible to what Schaeffer called these flights of non-reason. They want everybody to know about how they think reasonably and rationally, but over here they've taken a
there's nothing.
right. They've taken a completely unwarranted leap into what he called the realm of non-reason. And just because men were not made to live in that second story, that lower story exclusively, that there is this upper story, and there's just trouble involved with denying that. And I kind of felt like that little interlude in the movie represented that kind of thing. In this movie that's all darkness and sadness with no real hope and no real triumph, we're going to have this stupid story about the mom who thinks she saw a more grown version of the boy that was currently in her womb when she saw him. And
then something similar happens to him.
And he kind of feels like he saw her.
But as he's going to the hospital then, there's the other scene where the kid was sitting across from him on a seat.
Oh, and he felt like that was his
Well, they
new...
kind of smiled at each other, and then he looked away, and then he looked back, and the kid was no longer there.
Oh, was that his new kid?
Well, that's
that was the kid that was just being born?
Yeah.
Oh, see.
That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, okay. Well, you may be right.
And so then it makes sense that his mom said, oh, and this happened to me, and then here this is happening to him.
But nothing's ever resolved with Kate. They never find out anything.
No, they don't.
And the weird friend,
yeah,
who's got the government surveilling him and trying to figure out what he's doing.
You know, what's going on there.
And he commits suicide, but is it really suicide? Did the government kill him? And none of that is ever explained.
No.
That was so irritating.
And, yeah. Crazy.
All right. Well, we watched this bad movie because it had Benedict Cumberbatch in it.
Because I expected more from Masterpiece Theater.
Right.
And normally, they fulfill the bill, you know?
Yeah.
It's a quality thing. It's a good story. Usually it's classic. And this was just not.
Right. And so we felt bad about having wasted that time watching it.
But we thought, we'll put it to use.
Right. We'll redeem it by podcasting about it. So I don't know where you can find this. I don't know if you can.
You can find it online.
My advice is don't go looking for it.
It'll probably be playing a few times. You can watch it
Yeah.
For a limited time. I don't know why you'd want to.
Oh, boy. Yeah, don't watch this. Unless you're just interested in seeing kind of the natural evolution of a non-Christian worldview.
And I don't think it's going to be episodes. I think it was just a standalone thing.
That's a
that did standalone well.
thing.
Yeah. So I don't know if you need to take a break and we come back, or we're just going to.
We're just blasting through.
Blasting through.
Now the big thing, though, one point that they did seem to make, which I think we have noticed is a fairly common temptation when we deal with people who have suffered loss, or we suffer loss ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's a special kind of temptation in the marriage where on both sides there's a temptation to believe that the other person is doing it wrong in terms of their experience of their experience of grief, or how they're processing the whole loss and stuff. It's very easy to think, well, you're not doing it right. You're not doing it like I'm doing it. Yeah. And then the other one is saying, well, why are you not doing it like I'm doing it?
Yeah.
And so there is some individual thing that's just really true, that everybody kind of does go through grief a little bit differently, depending on lots of different factors and all that. And as hard as it is to go through it yourself and try to keep your head on straight and act in accordance with your faith, and not be swept away, like we talked in the last podcast, not allow our emotions to sweep us away unrestrained. Mm-hmm. As hard as that is, I think on top of that, in a marriage, now you're watching somebody else go through the same thing. Mm-hmm. And you either believe that you're not doing it right, or that you are, but they're doing it different, which has to be wrong. And so there's quite a bit of potential tension.
Yeah,
there,
I think that's a hard thing for a marriage to go through.
Yeah, for sure.
And a lot of marriages don't go through that. They don't continue because it's too much, and like you said, people are going through those stages of grief, and maybe not even necessarily at the same time, and yet it's a loss both have suffered, and so it's like, what do you mean you're here? I'm not there. I'm not ready to be there.
Right.
And there really is just a lot of grace that you need in that situation, to just let time do what it needs to do.
Yeah. And just be okay with the fact that this is the process that God has ordained, and there isn't a way to avoid it.
Yeah.
You really do kind of have to just go through it, whatever that looks like for you. And again, not unbound, but within the boundaries of your faith and what you know to be true. But just knowing what's true is not going to keep you from feeling certain ways and stuff like that.
But I think the situation in this story, where the girl is just missing and there's no resolution, there's not that they found anything.
Right.
They don't know what.
That's gotta be the worst.
Is she the little girl that lives 5 blocks away from me that I never see, or that is in a town 20 miles down the road?
Right.
I think that puts a whole nother element and level on what do you do?
Yeah, do I mourn her loss, or do I fiercely hold on to the belief that everything's going to be okay?
Yeah.
And then what if my spouse has taken the other option? Yeah. So there's a lot of potential tension there.
So, no fun.
No, it was the saddest movie I've ever seen. just in terms of the grief, and then how could you end it like that? That's just terrible.
It was really disappointing. Benedict was good, but
yeah.
4 thumbs down.
4 thumbs down. That's right.
And feet and toes on the feet, all down.
I was counting the big toes as thumbs. I don't know how you get to 4.
My 2 thumbs and your 2 thumbs.
Oh, okay. I thought we were both doing 4 thumbs.
I just have 2.
There was a Seinfeld episode. Do you remember the Seinfeld episode where they thought that Jerry's girlfriend had been in an accident and they had replaced her thumb with a toe? Oh boy, I must be tired. More wine!
Well, it's good that we can laugh about something with this movie. With this little
I don't think
episode
that's related to the movie.
Well,
you have to start talking about something else. All right. Well, we should go ahead and be done then.
Yep. And
You
even
got
Jordan
anything else to
also, who
say?
watched it with us, didn't like it. So it's not just us elderly people.
Yeah. All right. Shout out to Jordan before we close up shop. And so until next time, put on the full armor of God. Take that stand, my friends. Dominionize. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Worldview Media Podcast. Please visit reconstructionistradio.com to check out the other podcasts in our network and to download our free audiobooks.